So welcome back. We're looking forward, B'ez Hashem, to continue Perik Chaf, Igeres Chaf, to be exact, the 20th epistle of the Alter Rebbe. We're holding on page 262. Now, this, I believe, is the 12th class on this Igeres HaKodesh. This Igeres HaKodesh is distinct, and we again pledged in the very beginning that we're going to point this out in every single one of the classes on this Igeres, because the Igeres Chaf and similarly in Kuntre Sachen, these are two chapters which are totally different in its kind, in its style, complexity, extremely nuanced, Kabbalistic, a lot of stuff which are not common in most of the chapters, in all the chapters of Tanya for that matter. There's no comparison. Now, we spoke about this in length from the very beginning of this Chaf, and we did pledge we're going to point this out, and for the obvious reasons, why to point it out before every class. But if we could ask you to, in order, again, for the newcomers, of course, if you're on this chapter, you heard it enough time and again, but we did mention that we're going to do this time and in every one of these classes, again, for the newcomers to understand that this is a totally different type of chapter, a different type of Igeres. So if we could jump right into it, and if you want to know a little more of the backdrop of this Igeres HaKodesh Chaf, you can see in the previous classes, but again, we had a full presentation in this very last class on the 11th class, which is on the website. It's the second to the last. Now, if you're watching this class, it would be the second to the last. This is on the tanyaonline.com, the original website, which is tanyaonline.com. And then you have all the previous classes lined up on the screen. Actually, classes from the very beginning of Likutei Amorim, which we know that Tanya has the 5 segments. If you're not a newcomer, you know very well now. It's mentioned also, corresponds to, this is the Teda Shebiksav of Teda Sachsidus, thus the 5 segments in Tanya. We merited to learn the Likutei Amorim, Shaykh B'Amunah, Igeres HaTshuva, and now Igeres HaKodesh merited to come up to the 20th of Igeres HaKodesh. So all the classes are lined up in the previous on the screen of the original site. I say original site because wherever you're watching it, but the original site is tanyaonline.com, which has all the classes in a very organized manner and fashion lined up. The latter classes on the top of the screen, for example, to know a little bit of the backdrop of Igeres HaKodesh, and anyone probably the classes of the last 11 classes, but the last week we had a very clear presentation what the Igeres HaKodesh, this Igeres is all about, and it's why it's why it's distinct, and why it's important to know that it's distinct. So again, a click away, and it has also this, we mentioned also this, the original site. It's easy to follow the way it's set up. Again, you see it all there in the previous classes, but this Nikud, this point that it is distinct, it's important to know, and we explained there why. So again, one class before, let's just kind of come right into it. We're holding on page 262, the Seif, so it's 2, 4, 6 lines from the top, the last word v'chein. For that matter, in the last class, as well as others, we had a presentation on the entire Igeres HaKodesh. It's a unique segment. It's different than the first 3. And we had a full presentation on that in the beginning of Yud, 10 Igeres over, 10 Igeres back. Again, it's also just a quick click away. We acknowledge the technology which is brought ultimate comfort and ease to our pursuing Hashem's holy Torah, knowledge of every area, and knowledge and the ability to tap into areas of Torah which we couldn't prior to technology, or at least the speed, or at least the details, the ability to connect in, which this is the whole purpose why technology came about. We know Bereshit says Bishvil Beis Reishis, for Torah and for Am Yisrael. So all this unfolded, of course, for the purpose of creation, which is L'sakin eilam malchus shin dalad yud, to correct the world, to bring geula, redemption to the world, and starting from the yid, his personal redemption comes through Torah, mitzvahs, and then by extension, kol derchecha da'eyu kol masechel shem shemayim, and being the eir lagoyim nisaticha, bringing that great light out to the world, which one of the ways is, even among us, the ability to tap into thousands of shiurim with the tip of our fingers. There's such an increase, such a flow of Torah, of course, it comes as a result, and the reason is for all this technology is in order that the Yid should be able to do his mandate, to implement, to execute his mandate, alei adamis, individually and collectively all of Am Yisrael. So we say over here also, in the whole way it's set up, for example, we say in the 10th chapter, we had a full presentation, it's a click away. And also the ability to easily point out the cross references from the Alter Rebbe, and in our study over here, there's certain ideas which are explained expansively in other chapters, and it's a matter of, instead of spending additional time in the present class, it's just pointing out to another area which is explained elaborately, and again, it's just a click away. Again, thanks to the Eibishter's brachas of these, Eibishter's ability gave the seichel in mankind to have the ability to develop this technology in order for this purpose of expediting, or this in itself, the Lashon of the Alter Rebbe, and Perek Lamed Zayin, came about through the great toil of Am Yisrael throughout all millennia in their serving of Kodesh Baruch Hu. The Hashem makes it easier for us to access Torah and mitzvahs and whichever this, how they say that sandwiched together, it gives us the ability to do more, to learn more, to appreciate more of Elokus Hashem's Torah. Together, that we're able to actually do more and expedite our service, and together the true redemption, ultimate redemption in all its details, Mashiach, the Beis Hamikdash, everything which we know, and even what we don't know, what is going to unfold in this world, the promising, positive, promising news, and which the Eibishter promised in alignment with Yimais Mashiach. It's going to all unfold. We're in that very direction. We're on the conveyor belt. And so we had a full presentation of Igeres HaKodesh, the backdrop of Igeres HaKodesh in Igeres HaKodesh 10, Yud, which is 10 back. Also, again, if you click away. So, I will just say, add to what we had in the last 11, giving the heads up from the entire Igeres HaKodesh, which is complex and Kabbalistic, if you will. Today's class is by far more than even everything before. We're going to try to navigate through it and hopefully make it happen. But definitely, you can start the first words. Even the opening of today's class, you see this is within a difficult chapter. This is a difficult, more of a subtle idea which is represented over here. So, the Kav itself, we spoke about this, I think it was the 8th or 9th class, if I'm not mistaken. We had a full presentation, and of course it's no point to take the time, because we took a lot of time explaining this Kav based on the study of the Arizal, of the Igul HaGodel and the trickle of light, which creates the entire Seder Ishtalshel, which gives the ability to say the Ishtalshel is to unfold the order of evolution. That's the Kav. And we spoke about it last week as well. But the Kav, Boka HaParsa, breaks through the partition between Atzilus and Bria. And here he goes, the Kav itself, HaMalubash, which is invested in the end of Netzach HaYesod of Ak. Ak, right? Actually, we talk about Ak many times. It would be referred to the inner dimension of Keser. In Keser, there's Atik Yomin and Arich Hanpin. Atik Yomin would be, or Atiko Kadisha would be the Ayin. This, and here it's Aleph, because this is a level which is higher. When we say higher, like we can appreciate it in our own system, much more inclusive, right? For example, any experience. Let's say a teacher has to teach a student. So prior to engaging in the actual teaching, he pretty much has the whole idea encapsulated in his mind, what it's going to look like. not only just the details, what it's going to look like, your child's going to sit over here and I'm going to open the Gemara here, it's the whole idea which would unfold in the next few hours or the next few days or in that whole year for that matter. It's all there, all inclusive in a very deep area within the teacher. Now, the details, the accuracy of the details, of course, the teacher can never know all the exact details because many of them unfold in the process, which doesn't exist by Kodesh Baruch Hu, because Kodesh Baruch Hu knows everything at all times exactly to its detail. But just as an example, it's the idea having it all inclusive, encapsulated inclusive in my mind, this which would ultimately unfold in detail. Is that something which is closer to me or farther from me? Meaning to say, because when it'll unfold, that's when it's going to become real. So that's when it's real on the ground. So that's when it's real to me. And that's really closer to my nefesh. And the understanding how it would look like is something which is removed because it's not real, or the opposite. The fact that it has to come down, it would come down into reality. It takes time and patience, and there's certain development, and there's certain evolution, how this will unfold, the actual teaching, and eventually takes a month or a year, as an example. That's more distant from my nefesh because that's already coming down in time and place. And in the actual reality, the way it's in my mind, I have this whole image, the way it would look like, that's closer to the nefesh. And of course, the latter is true, as opposed to the former, because the fact that it has to take time to come down into a reality means that's removed from where this reality begins, which is, of course, my nefesh, in this case, a nefesh of a teacher. And in every area, for example, again, we talk about the teacher, pedagogy, study, master, pupil, and so on. But in every area, these certain things have to unfold. Means to say it's more distant from where this would be coming from, as opposed to the way it is in an all-inclusive manner. It's much closer to my nefesh because it doesn't have to yet come down into detail. And so too, lahavdal of Havdalas, there's the whole seder hishtalshus, the order of evolution, but there's the higher levels, which is much closer to the kav, where you have the called ak. In this case, it's not the Atika Gadisha, which is actually a level in Keser, which is in Seder lower than Adam this act, because this is the Aleph, Adam Kadmo, the primordial Adam. Meaning to say that however everything, the whole order of evolution unfolds in the entire Seder Shtalshus, it's all in Nukuda Achas, in one Nukuda, and Eibishter knows it not only in a general form, like it would be by us, the teacher pretty much knows 80% how this will unfold, but not 100%. Of course, by Kodesh Baruch Hu, it's 100%. But it all stands. It says Soikra Miskira Achas. In one moment, it's all there. And how much is it there? To its entire detail. But it didn't unfold yet. It doesn't matter because in the Eibishter's mind, there's ein koyach chaser peil. It doesn't have to unfold. But even by us as human beings, lahavdil, even before something unfolds, we do have something which is an Adam Kadmon appreciation of a matter, the way it's all inclusive, because it's already so close to my nefesh in its transcendent of time and place and actual evolution, development, that exists, this phenomenon exists by human being as well. The only thing it's missing accuracy because we don't know exactly how it will unfold. By Kodesh Baruch Hu, when it comes to the Seder Ishtalshus, the order of evolution, there's Kodesh Baruch Hu from the highest of levels to the very lowest of levels, and talking about lowest of levels, Atzilus Bria. Again, Atzilus is a high level, but in comparison to higher than Atzilus, and then there's Bria, Yitzir, Asi, and then Elam Asiyah Gashmis, and then the Hagbala, the areas of the limitation of time and space, which is the nitty-gritty of Elam Hazah, which is certainly far away from the nefesh, so to say, of Kodesh Baruch Hu, but there is the way the Eibishter has in 1 second. The Skira Achas, he has everything. He appreciates everything on that level of Adam Kadmon, which is again the higher level of the eagle, Hagad, eagle, the inside of the eagle, if you will, based on what we learned, very close to the Kav. And what's the connection of it being very close to the Kav? Because the Kav is coming from an area of true Ein Sof. It's a trickle of light, but the quantity of light is coming from the Ein Sof. Again, you have to see that class. So there, it connects there. The Adam Kadmon is a higher level within the Kav. And then, because it's Adam Kadmon, in the end of the day, it's all inclusive. So you have all midas, but again, not the way the midas are divided later. And even later in Elam Atzilus, where it's a world which there's a complete distinction of every midah, chachma, bina, chachma, mina, das, chesed, gvura, tiferet, netzach, yisay. This is all within Ak, the all-inclusive, whatever would ultimately the evolution of all Seder Ishtals, but including all the midas. So he says the end of Netzach Yisayid of Ak, which really includes everything, even though in lower parts within Ak, which is also these ideas, the way they stand in its very general, all-inclusive form. And it says, Shehu Seif Ragli HaYesha Shalei, because it's Netzach Yisayid, as it says in a number of places, there is Yesher, and then there is Makif, Eir Yashar, Eir Makif, but this is within the Eir Makif, which is more of more encompassing, which is what Adam Kadmon is all about. But then you have Netzach, you say the buildup of the spheres within Adam Kadmon, which sounds paradoxical, but if it's Adam Kadmon, if it's all inclusive, why is there spheres? But the spheres itself is in the spirit of Adam Kadmon, the spirit of Makif. But if you break it down, the seven spheres, this is the Yesher within the Makif, Yesher Shalai. And this is, of course, the end. And that Adam Kadmon, in the end of the day, includes everything. Everything means to say the entire Seder Shtalshus, Beskira Achas, in one moment. But everything, even where it's broken down, so to say, in the Midas, Netzach Yisayid is the end of the Midas. Of course, Malchus comes after, but Malchus is separate. Hamistaymin b'Malchus Asiyah, which this ends up all the way in the bottom of Olam Hasiyah. Because again, it's all-inclusive, but even though it's on the level of Adam Kadmon, it's prior to the actual evolution. But by the way, it's not prior in time. It's all synonymous, because the way it unfolds in time, and then on the higher level, it's all there, all-inclusive, simultaneous. Like we say, Hashem Hu Elikim. Shem Hashem is higher than time and place. The phenomenon time and place doesn't exist with Shem Hashem. It only exists in Elikim. It only exists at the level of Malchus. Malchus is Hashem Melech, Hashem Melech, Hashem Yimlech, like the Alter Rebbe explains there in Shar Yichud V'Emunah, a click away in these prokim, within Shar Yichud V'Emunah, and then he says the Shem Havaya, which is Hoya Hoiva V'Yeh Ke'echad, which is transcendent of time. Past, present, and future, like one. Comes to Malchus Shem Elikim, Zman, there is Melech, Molech, Yimlech. That's when the phenomenon of time and place comes into being. So are they different in different areas? No, of course they're different areas, but they're simultaneous. In the level of Shem Havaya, there is no time and there is no place. In the area of Shem Elikim, there is. Hashem Elikim, as Alter Rebbe explains famously, you could take a look in Perek Zayin of Shayich V'Emunah, an enormous telling chapter, speaks about the fusion of Shem Havaya and Shem Elikim, or in the Alter Rebbe's Lashon, there's Shem Havaya and Adna, which is synonymous with Shem Elikim, in the presentation of Shayich V'Emunah, because in the end of the day, it's simultaneous. And here, just to give an example, we say it ends in Malchus Asiyah. This is where the evolution begins, but in the world of Ak, Adam Kadmon, it's all inclusive, and the Lashon Beskira Achas, with one vision. Just to understand it, it's a little bit of a cheap mashal, perhaps, even to use it so boldly to say, but when you're on the ground and you're part of Elam, in other words, you're grounded in Elam Haza, and there's a row of 100 homes, as an example. So one home blocks your vision from the other, and you want to get to the other, you have to go around, and then you see the other, and then you see the other, and it could take you, let's say, 100 minutes till you get to the end, the last one. You fly up, you take up a flight, and usually we see the first few seconds of a flight, you see that same city which you're flying from, and many times you're acquainted with this which you're looking at because it's your neighbor, as an example. And even not, you see that everything would take you 100 minutes to go by those 100 homes. Now you're looking from on high, you see the 100 homes in 1 second. Why? Because you're on a higher level, but you're looking at those very homes. Yeah, but you're looking at them from a much higher level. So you can see them in 1 second. Is it those homes that you same homes you're looking at when you're on ground level? Yes, exactly those homes. But the whole appearance is totally different. You can even see many of the details, but nonetheless, you see it all together. And now you're talking about, just as an example, it's the same Seder Ishtalshus, but from the level of Adam Kadmon, all-inclusive, meaning to say that every detail, and again, by Hashem, it's not 80% like in the example we gave with the teacher and the pupil that you pretty much know, from the year before how this will all go, but you never know the exact detail how this will unfold with the teaching of that particular student. No, when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he knows everything, but there in Adam Kadmon, it's all inclusive. And then you have the Ragli Yesher of Adam Kadmon, so that ends up, again, from that vision, from that lens, but the lens is everything, like in the example we just gave, it's those very homes that you see, so it ends up in the Malchus Dasiyah. So he continues, he says, the Ha'oris HaKav, Mi'ira Shom, it shines there, and as we said, the Kav has that Kayach, like we learned in the previous chapters, from the Ein Sof, because the Kav is a trickle of the Eagle HaGodel prior to the Tzimtzum. Again, you have to see that class we mentioned earlier, and that shines Umislabesh the Neves in the Eiran Neshama of Yutzviris, the B'ri Yetzirasi, like we learned last week, the Eiran Neshama, that's where the Kayach of Bli Gvul of the Kav, which is associated with the Ein Sof, which gives the ability to create again, to Hashem's expression with the program of Yesh Mi'ayin, which is unique in its kind, as we explained in the previous weeks. The Neshama of Yutzvir is a B'ri Yetzirasiyah, which is a Lukus. As we mentioned again, the Eira Neshama, which is connected to this very deep light, is a Lukus, but now it's investing in B'ri Yetzirasiyah. Then he goes on, the Ha'ara, de Ha'ara, literally translated, the ray of the rain, which is the second level. Mislabesha, Mislabshes, B'nefesh Ruach, the Yud Tzvir is the B'ri Yetzirah. The lower level is invested not in the Neshama of Yud Tzviris, B'ri Yetzirasiyah, what we learned last week in the 10th Tzviris, and namely in its Kalim. If you remember last week, again, it would be a click away to understand why are we emphasizing the Yud Tzviris. So it says it invests in the lower level. The Ha'ara, de Ha'ara is in the Nefesh Ruach, the Yud Tzviris of B'ri Yetzirasiyah, as opposed to Neshama. And Va'av Gam Mecholak Kelim Shalahem, in all their Kelim. And if we remember again from last week, why is it crucial in the Kelim? Because Kelim have that Kayach to ultimately create Yesh Mi'ayin. It's via the Kelim which this program, if you will, is implemented. The ex nihilo expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, phenomenon. And then comes the Ha'ara, de Ha'ara, de Ha'ara, which again, you see the three, Ha'ara, de Ha'ara, de Ha'ara, which is the third level. That, right, the Ha'ara is the ray, the offspring, but here it's a triple lashon, because before we said the Ha'ara is in the Eira Neshama, and then the Ha'ara de Ha'ara in the Nefesh Ruach Neshama, Nefesh Ruach, Yitzvir the Biyah, and the Ha'ara de Ha'ara de Ha'ara is in the actual Nivroim v'Neitzim v'Nasim, is in the actual creations, formation, and this which is literally Nasim, which means this which is in the making of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That if you look at the Yamim, the actual creations of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and everything that exists in the Yam, Atom Mechayis Kulam, it's you which is right now vitalizing everything, which is under the umbrella, if you will, of this, which the Alter Rebbe explains in Shaykh B'Emunah, that it's not that Hashem created the world in 6 days of creation and then everything just exists the way it is. No, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is constantly giving life, energy, vitalizing, vivifying this very creation, and now, presently, V'atom Mechayis Kulam, and especially as it, or basically what the Rebbe writes, Altik Mechaya there in Shaykh B'Emunah El Mahaber, right now he's creating. You look at that stone, you think it's created by the 6 days of creation, and it sits there without any movement and no expression of any vitality. No, it's right now being created by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and if the Eibishter would pull back his force, the energy of creation from that stone, it wouldn't just break apart, decay, so it would completely disappear, because Hashem is right now vitalizing that very stone and everything. Now this Ato, as explains in the last few weeks, the evolution, how it comes to the Ein Sof, particularly into alignment with Yesh Mi'ayin, the Eira Neshama, associated with the Kelim Datzilus, which again is this which brings about this Yesh Mi'ayin phenomenon into being, into actuality. And then this all comes from the Eira Kav, which is connected to the Eagle HaGadol, connected to the Ein Sof. And again, it goes through Adam Kadmoin, which is this all the entire creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but the way it stands, biskira achas, in a very general, all-encompassing, all-inclusive manner, but every detail is there. And that ha'ara, when we say the Adam Kadmon, includes everything, not only the higher levels of this Seder Shtalshalos, of the order of evolution, Atzilus, or anything similar, but all the way to the lowest level within Seder Shtalshalos, which would be Olam HaSiyah. What level is expressed? So it's the ha'ara, or the ha'ara de ha'ara, which comes into the Nefesh Ruach, or the ha'ara de ha'ara, which comes into which becomes the life force and energy in all the Nivraim and Neitzim V'Nasim, all the way in Malchus Dasiyah. Hayam B'chol Shabem Ba'atem Achayis Kulam. This is the expression of this very energy to give them life. On the different levels. On the way it's an Adam Kadmon, eventually how it unfolds. But again, it works simultaneous. Even in the example we gave, when the master is teaching, when this teacher is teaching his pupil, and which means it has to unfold in time and place and system and notebooks and the whole framework of teaching. So as he's doing that, it's not not that he left that imagination behind before he started, and now he comes into the actual nitty-gritty of the actual performance of his teaching, but it works simultaneous because he always has the way it is on his general form in the same time that he's actually executing, implementing this teaching with all its details, because those very details, he has this simultaneously in its very general form. And again, by a teacher, it's in a very general form, but there's missing accuracy inevitably as human beings. But by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's nothing missing. Every detail is there. But it's always there in its detail, the way it unfolds in Tzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Asiyah, but also in the Adam Kadmon format. And there it's in a very general form, Soikra Miskira Achas, one little look, but all the details are there. And that energy of the Kav, which is an Adam Kadmon, as we mentioned before, the Adam Kadmon is the higher level of the Kav. That's why it has that Kayach to be Soikra Miskira Achas, because it's connected to the higher levels of the Kav, which the Kav itself comes from the Ein Sof Shali before the Eagle HaGodel, which is the unadulterated purity of the Ein Sof, even though it's a trickle of light, it's a Kav, because more than that, the order of evolution would never be able to come to being, as we explained there in that 7th class. So it carries that energy of the Kav, and that ultimately it's all inclusive of the entire Seder Ishtalshus, and on its different levels, if it's the Ha'ara, the Ha'ara de Ha'ara, or Ha'ara, the Ha'ara de Ha'ara. The Rebbe continues that make no mistake that even when you're talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even you want to say Adam Kadmon, of course Adam Kadmon seeing having all this in a very general manner, but nonetheless we just said Adam Kadmon, there's Yosher of Adam Kadmon, which is all the spheres lined up again in its subtle expression, of course, because you're dealing with that Adam Kadmon. But there's still the higher levels within Adam Kadmon, the lower levels, the way it's expressed in Malchus Dasiyah. So even though that it expresses such a deep level within HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but in the end of the day, there is the higher level, the lower level, the Raglei Yesher, and so on. Of course, that does not describe the core of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because when you talk about the core of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, no one, as we had many times, save of Kol Almin, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is totally transcendent of all Almin, which really would reflect this Eir Koidim Atzimtzum, before the Eagle HaGala, which is the Ein Sof, the way the Eibush Hashem is formed himself by himself without any division, even the slightest level of division, the division the way it's in Adam Kadmon, which is again enormously subtle. Because you say Seikrim B'Skirachas, in one moment Eibush has the entire Seder Shtalshalos in front of him. So, which is, of course, is an extremely deep level within HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but there, nonetheless, subtly, there's Maila and Mata, and that doesn't exist when you're talking about the core of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Seviv Kol Almin dimension within HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So make no mistake that the Adam Kadmon, that is the highest level of Hashem. No, Chas v'Shalom. As Al Tanya continues, I'm going to say, you say, the core of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, together Makom Klal. You can't say one ha'ara is here in the neshama and the nefesh ruach biyah, and then in the yamim chalash b'hem, which means there's milo mata. No, there's no distinction at all when it comes to the Ein Sof Kishula Atzme, the way Hashem is by himself, the Seviv Kol Almin, as he says over here, the way the Eibishter surrounds him, he just transcended of the whole phenomenon of Olam, even the subtleties of Olam, align the way they are in Adam Kadmon. And by the Eibishter, it's Seviv Kol Almin B'Shabbat. V'Sashemayim V'Saretz Ani Molei, the whole core of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in heaven and earth, and just like he's in heaven, so too in earth. You can't say, well, there's less in Eilam B'ri Yitzir Asiyah, less than in Asiyah, less than in the Yamim B'chol Bahem, in the Nivroim, Neitzirim, Nasim, like he says, in the creation, formation, and the doings of Hashem, in which there's of course differences. The way it is, again, on the surface, Eilam B'ri is Gan Eden Ha'eli, an enormous presentation, so to say, of the experience of the Shekhinah, the Ziv HaShekhinah, Mishtadikim Yoshvim, and Nenim B'Ziv HaShekhinah. It's a world full of elukus, overt elukus, transparent elukus, in comparison, again, to Elam HaYitzir, in comparison to Elam HaAtzilus. It's totally different. Atzilus is a total different phenomenon, as we spoke about many times, but Bria, in comparison to Yitzir, Yitzir is a Gan Eden HaTachtin, but it's also a spiritual world. But you can't compare the Gili, the revelation, the manifestation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mitzir, in comparison to Elam HaBriya. And so to Elam HaSiyah, and Elam HaSiyah Ruchnis, and Elam HaSiyah Gashmis. And Masiyah Gashmis, there's also different levels. There's the Shul, the Beis HaMikdash, and L'Havdil out of the Beis HaMikdash, and so on. But everybody understands this is associated one way or another with the Memalik of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way Hashem invests in Eilamis. But from the perspective of the core of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're going to think 1 second that the Eibishter is less in Eilam Hazeh than he is in Eilam HaBriya and Eilam Gan Eden HaElyon. Or for that matter, even in Elam Atzilus, or for that matter, the highest level, higher than Elam Atzilus in Keser, or even in Adam Kadmain. The whole Eibishter, from that perspective, the whole Eibishter is here exactly in the same way. The Alter Rebbe has similar expression in Perik Mem Ches and Likutei Amarim. Again, it's a click away. So he says it maybe in different words, but for example, the message of the Alter Rebbe, if infinity is excited about 1 trillion more than it's excited about 1 billion, because it's closer, it's such a great number, so there's a little more buddy with infinity, as an example, it's not infinite. Because true infinity, billion, 1 trillion, 1 million, 100,000, 1,000, 10,000, and for that matter, even the number 1, in the face of infinity, it ought to be exactly the same. The moment infinity is somewhat, feels a little more comfortable around the number of trillion, as an example, so it's not infinite, because it's commensurate to what the numbers of trillion are talking to that level, which is excited about the trillion over the billion and over the million and so on. True infinity is that the billion and 1 has to be exactly the same from the perspective and the lens of true infinity. Similarly, over here, when you talk about the Seviv Kol Almin, the way the Eibishter forms Sabayim means transcendent of any of these divisions, the whole Eibishter is here exactly the way he is in Atzilus, and even higher, and yet higher, even in Adam Kadmon, this level we just learned about, because that's what Seviv Kol Almin means. That's what the true Ein Sof is. That it's higher than Mokim Seviv Kol Almin B'Shaveh. Es Hashemayim V'Saretz Ani Moli B'Shvachas. Equally, V'les Asar Poni Minei. There's no place which is devoid of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he says, Ad Ba'oretz Halazu HaGashmis. Of course, that would include even this very physical world. Really, this physical world has the same energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way Eilam HaBriya, the Neshamis, which is Yeshvim and Nenim and Ziv HaShekhinah and Gan Eden HaElyon, the place where all the great tzaddikim are, Moshe Rabbeinu. That's apparently all elukus, and here there is all elukus or little elukus. For that matter, this is a world which defies elukus. We mentioned the Peirik Lamed Vav. By definition, by default, this world not only doesn't protest the emes, but it denies the emes. Ani v'af siyait. It's all about me, and we don't have to elaborate of the opaqueness and the devoid, so to say, by default, the message of elukus, the opacity of Elam Hazeh, the opaque presentation, the chayshich, the darkness of Elam Hazeh. And you're going to say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here in the same way? The answer is yeah. When you talk about Seder Ishtalshus, you talk about that dimension within HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Of course, it's all one HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we mentioned before, Hashem Hu Elikim. But it's different expressions of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. even this high level of Adam Kadmon, in the end of the day, you find these divisions, as he explains over here, subtly, very subtle, but nonetheless, can't compare it to the core of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is, of course, from that perspective, like we said before, infinity, 1 in a trillion, has to be exactly the same. The whole entire Eibishter is here in this physical world, exactly, without any difference, the way he is in Elam Atzilus or in Keser or even in Adam Kadmon. For if it would be, there would be a difference. So that's not the Ein Sof. Ein Sof means Ein Sof. That's what the Alter Rebbe adds. In this very physical world. So why don't we see Hashem in this very manner? Because that's the point of Seiviv. The actual Makiv, the Alter Rebbe continues, Makiv is Seiviv. It's more an all in surrounding. But again, the Alter Rebbe makes it clear. Actually, the Alter Rebbe writes in Kumishkasa Pirush B'Lekuti Amorim. The Alter Rebbe is referencing actually to that. He doesn't say Perik Memches, but the Alter Rebbe undoubtedly is referring to that chapter, Memches 48th chapter in Lekuti Amorim, and it's a click away on this very site. As the Alter Rebbe writes, Makif is saved, that it's all in common. It doesn't mean it's just surrounding. Because on the surface, it's surrounding. I can't really tap into this which is surrounding. I could tap into things which are here. Even, I can't go ahead and deal with the clouds because they're all the way up there. Or the sky for that matter, or the sun, the moon, they're far away, no. And apparently that would be the trend as the literal translation of Seviv, it's surrounding. Therefore, we don't feel the core of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baltantra makes it clear, it's just surrounding, all-encompassing, it's not here. No, of course, surrounding it in this area has a total different connotation because the whole point is that the whole Eibishter is here. The moment it has to surround and it can't come in, meaning to say that's not the Ein Sof. That's in the example that infinity doesn't go well with the number 10 or 1,000 or 1. It's closer to where the billion is. No. It's connected to the one in the same way, meaning to say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here in the exact same way. Seiviv and Makiv is regarding our conscious appreciation to that level of Ayr. That's the meaning of Seiviv. Not, Alter Rebbe makes it clear, it's not like a Seiviv, it's far away, it's just surrounding, the way we understand something surrounding us, and therefore we can't easily tap into it. No. It's there. It's exactly there, where I am, where you're sitting, wherever you're listening to the class. Right here, you have the entire Ein Sof. For that matter, we had this, the Alter Rebbe has there in Shayich Bemuno, and other places. Atu at Kedim Shnivraelim Atu The Alter Rebbe begins this famously in this Perik Chof in Tanya, that Atu, it's the same Eibishter before creation and after creation, which means when HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates Olam Hazeh, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates Olam Hazeh, so it's not that before HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Olam Hazeh was only the Eibishter, only Hashem. And now that Hashem created Olam Hazeh, this very physical world. So now there's two ideas. One, there is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and now there is a world which HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought into the picture. He's in control, very much in control, every detail within Olam Hazeh. Of course, he's Hashem. But you can't say he's the only entity which is there is only Hashem, the way it was before creation. Really, you can't say that, apparently, because before Hashem created the world, there was nothing. Only Hashem. That's what it would appear, and maybe justifiably appear so, because in the end of the day we see a world, and then we know about the entire Seder Shtalshalos, which didn't exist at a certain point. But again, by us, it actually came into being Elam Hazeh 5,700 and so many years ago, as an example. And before that, there was taka nothing. Nothing is no thing at all. Not like, it was just empty. It was all deserted. No, desert is a part of creation. We can't imagine what nothing is no thing at all is all about. We cannot imagine because we're part of creation. What does it mean there was no time before creation? The clock wasn't ticking? No, it wasn't ticking. There was no phenomenon of time at all. Could we appreciate an idea that it exists, but there is no time? Doesn't the time just automatically do? We can't, because we're part of the fabric of time and space. So we can't really appreciate it for what. But in reality, time is a creation, like everything within this creation was created ex nihilo by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So too time. So before HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, was only HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now there is a world. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in full control of the world. But could you say it's exactly the same? Apparently not. No, that's what we proclaim every single day before davening. Atu achulei nivraelam, atu mish nivraelam. That even HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, nonetheless, the creation is just an expression of the Ein Sof. And again, you have to see the explanation of the Alter Rebbe there and in Shayich B'Emunah. it brings about a different twist also in our understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence, which is similar to what he's saying over here, but there it's the idea of that the Olam is really not a Metzias Amiti, it's just a way the Eibishter is the true Achdus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to express itself. Again, you have to see the chapters there, Chav Aleph, and then later, of course, in Shari Yichud Emunah. But here he says it's similar, that in the end of the day, it's not Makif Seviv, it's removed, it's right here. Makif Seviv is in the context of our appreciation of it, or the way the Eibishter set it up, that it shouldn't be something that we should be able to identify clearly, because if we would not be able to exist as finite human beings, or anything finite for that matter, because anything finite cannot stand in the face of the infinite, cannot exist in the face of the infinite. So of course, this in order the finite to come to being, the Eibishter had to leave it Seviv, but again, not Seviv in reality. In reality, the entire Eibishter is here and now, exactly the way it was before creation, in the same exact way, the way wherever he is, in the Eagle HaGadol, as we call it, the way the Eibishter forms himself by himself, that whole Eibishter is right here in exact same way, without any difference. The only thing is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted the idea of the finite, finitude, the whole dynamic of the finite should come into being, so the Eibishter establishes the Seviv. This level should be in a all-encompassing, meaning to say, it should be removed from our consciousness, so we could exist as finite human beings, or find the whole notion of finitude, meaning to say, Bri, Yitzir, I see this world, and again, why would the Eibishter want it? Why didn't you just leave the lights on and have the Seviv Kol Almin be manifest, and then everything is good, because everything is a lukus? Wonderful, but in the end of the day, the Eibishter Nisava, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at least like Dir B'Tachtein, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted a dwelling place in this very physical world, and there has to be a Tachtin. In order to be a Tachtin, there has to be this order of evolution, from the highest levels to the low, and eventually this very physical world, which is nothing lower than it. Ein Tachtin Lamate Imenu, Dal Terebes Loshin and Pedig Lamed Vav. And here the Eibishter wants the Yid to come down, the Neshama come down, and the Yid should transform this world, introduce in the end of the day the Emes Hashem and the highest levels of Emes Hashem, even the Seviv Kol Almin, into Elam Hazeh through the learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. And B'chol Derechecha L'Shem Shamayim, B'chol Masech L'Shem Shamayim, B'chol Derechecha Dei, as we explain many times, and to be the Eil HaGoyim, and eventually to establish Vayashem L'Melech HaKol HaOretz. So in order for this plan of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to unfold, of course, there had to be this Seder Ishtal Shalus, and eventually this world, and which is a Tachon, devoid of that consciousness of this Sefer Kol, in order to be able to exist, function, and ultimately make for HaKadosh Baruch Hu this Dira B'Tachtenim. So there was a purpose why there was that devoid, or that idea of Sefer, why the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not totally manifest. But doesn't take away from one bit of the fact that the entire HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here in an exact same way that he's where he is for himself, by himself. That's the point of Sefer Kol Almin. It's like someone says, you have a chest of gold which is worth $100 billion, and you didn't open it up yet. It doesn't take away from the fact if you opened it, or you were privileged to tap into it, you're privy to tap into it, it doesn't take away that if you did or you didn't, it's still there. So of course, if it's there, it's going to be locked up. You would not be able to appreciate it, and you'd be able to, you just have to, it wouldn't make a real change in your life other than the knowledge that it's there, as opposed to if you opened it up and you're able to take out the jewelry, the diamonds and gold, and incorporate it into your life, which would make it easier to pay your mortgage or whatever. Of course, that's when it would make a difference. But when it's locked up and you don't have access to it, it doesn't take away from the fact that it's there. And eventually you'll find the combination to open it up, which is again the avodah of the Yid, to introduce bit by bit this Seviv Kol Almin, the Hashem Hu Elikim, which is the ultimate overarching mandate of the Yid, of course, to tap into the treasure. But if you did, or if it's there, or if it's locked at the time, it doesn't take away from the fact it's there. And so too, the whole Eibishter is here. It's in a way of Seviv Kol Almin, meaning to say the way the Eibishter set it up, in that it's not, of course not actually removed, as Dal Treba underscores in that chapter, but removed from our conscious mind, in order for us to live and exist and do what we have to do in our mandate, Alei Adamis, in this world. Meaning to say that where does the actual details of the hispashtus, of the chayas, that comes from the Kav. Starting from the very trickle of light, which was the reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu established this tzimtzum, as we spoke about in that class. I think it's the 7th. I have to look around, the 7th or 8th, which we had that whole presentation of the Kav coming from the Eagle HaGadol. The whole reason why they made the tzimtzum is because without that, of course, it wouldn't be ever a possibility to have the Seder Ishtalshalos. Because it's nothing, even the highest level of the finite, couldn't even Adam Kadmon cannot stand in the face of true infinity. So the Eibishter had to establish this tzimtzum. In the end of the day, the entire Eibishter is here. But the Seder Ishtalshalos should be the actual evolution of Seder Ishtalshalos. And the emanation associated with Elam Atzil is creation associated with the Bria, formation associated with Elam Yitzira, the making, the doing of which is associated with Elam Asiyah and Elam Asiyah Gashmi. Of course, then it came down into detail, but via the Kav, that trickle of light which came in from the Eagle HaGadol, came into Seder Ishtalshalos through the Ha'ara Mi'akav Canal, like we explained earlier. Bez Hashem will continue to learn over here. We'll continue to learn in that even for the Eirin Sof Hamaki, a Sev of Hamakif, there's something also which establishes the phenomenon of the actual Bria, which is the implementation or the realization of this Yesh Mi'ayin. Again, we had a bit of it before, but this is what the Rebbe is going to culminate this idea in the very as Hashem in the following words, which we look forward as Hashem in this coming week. Haba Aleinu L'Teva. Have a wonderful night.